Everybody, welcome on back to the next panel for our SheTek Women's Tech Conference 2023 is Women in Cybersecurity, Protecting the Digital Landscape. With us, we have John Mendes, Julie Tracy, and Sejal. I'm going to mess it up. I apologize, Sejal. Sejal Lakhani. They will introduce themselves more fully. So, John, as our moderator, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Sure, great. Thanks, Joanne. Welcome, everyone. Special thanks to Sejal and Julie. Really appreciate you making time to join our event. I'll kick off the introductions. As Joanne mentioned, John Mendes. I'm an employee of PamTen. I lead our cybersecurity practice. I took a pretty traditional route to cybersecurity. I've got a background in IT, and through the years became more and more interested in cybersecurity, and then finally, based on a lot of our client demand for questions around cybersecurity and controls and how do they protect themselves, saw the opportunity, and we went ahead and created a cybersecurity practice, and then pretty much shifted all of my focus onto cybersecurity. With that said, I'll hand it off to Julie.
Thanks, John. I'm Julie Tracy, and I'm a manager with Withum, Smith & Brown in the cyber advisory area. And I took a non-traditional way, not only to IT, but then in turn into cyber. So I actually started out my career really and truly as an epidemiologist. I was working for a medical school in Chicago doing research, and my research funding ran out, and I had an opportunity to interview for multiple jobs within the university. And the one that I landed on was being a network analyst for the medical school, and what was very attractive to me because it was no longer based on grant money that ran in 5-year cycles. And I got started doing that in that environment. And from there, did 10 years of consulting, 12 or 13 years in a bank, in a couple of banks, and the last 12 years as a CISO in the bank that I work for. And now I've been with Withum for 12 years. So I've got the opportunity to sit on both sides of the seat as a consultant and as a consumer in charge of the cybersecurity for a pretty highly regulated industry. So that's me. Sejal?
Thanks, Tracy. So guys, my name is Sejal Lakhani. Joanne, you actually did really well with that. I also took a pretty non-traditional route. I was on that corporate ladder in the banks. I worked through Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, climbed that corporate ladder that apparently never ends, decided to quit my job. And my husband had started our company called TechWerxe. And in 2008, he started it. In 2013, I joined. And in 2015, I took over as the CEO. And I ran everything from operations to sales to marketing. In 2019, unfortunately, my husband passed away. And I took over the company, and we were just named for the third year in a row one of the top 100 cyber companies nationally, and we're the number one cybersecurity company in New Jersey. So,
wow!
I'm also a mom of 2 boys.
A full plate there, right?
Full plate, love it.
Okay, well, thanks for the introductions. Let's go ahead and get started. I guess some housekeeping rules. Joanne will be monitoring the Q&A, and we've carved out. John,
should we have Amit? I'm sorry, Dr. Amit.
Has Amit joined?
If you want to introduce
Sorry
yourself.
about that. Sure. Amit, could you please go ahead?
I was a few minutes late. I apologize for that. But yeah, I mean, first of all, a pleasure to be here with you all. I understand we're talking about our non-traditional path to cyber. So yes, I have a story for you too here. So my name is Amit. The doctor is from my PhD in technology law. So I am the first Israeli that got accepted to the direct program for a PhD in the law and JSD from UC Berkeley, where I still teach in the Master in Cybersecurity program. Until about 4 months ago, I was the head of cyber policy of Intel Corporation. So I managed all of Intel's, the chip manufacturer, cybersecurity policy engagement, global government affairs globally. So my job was to work with industry peers to educate policymakers around the world on the importance of cyber and shape markets to create opportunities for cyber technologies, and also understand where the industry is going based on future regulation. I also was the chair of the ITI Cybersecurity Committee, so I had the pleasure to represent 80 of the largest technology companies in the world as they engage with policymakers globally. And 4 months ago, I quit that job to become a founder and CEO of a company called OpenPolicy. And we are the world's first technology platform for policy intelligence and engagement. So we are democratizing access to and engagement on future policy, and also the ability to predict what requirements are going to be applicable to security based on future regulation and standards. So very relevant to everything we're all doing, and working with some amazing startups and VCs in that space. And I came from the technical side, but also mostly legal. And I fell in love with cyber because my sister is a famous hacker. Her name is Karen. And she actually was a TED speaker, and she was the first Israeli woman to speak at TED. Then 2014, she shared with the universe on the TED stage the message of collaborating with hackers as the immune system of the internet. So I was doing my legal research, and she was telling me all about hackers, and that connection resulted in one of the largest changes to the anti-hacking law. So one of my first nonprofits focused on creating breaches between hackers and corporations by facilitating better contracts to enable hacking more legally. So big believer in non-traditional paths into cyber. That's my personal story, and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. That was very, very interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We've divided this session into 3 parts. We'd like to begin with just talking a little bit about what some of the drivers are, what's driving the demand for security talent. Then we'll focus on some of the opportunities. We'll talk about roles, career paths, and then we'd like to wrap up with some suggestions and tips on how our audience can kind of get started on their cybersecurity career journey. So to help us understand who we have in the audience, Joanne has teed up a couple poll questions. So Joanne, you still with us? Great, thank you.
I'm here.
Yep. So if you can just answer, where do you think you fall into these categories? Give everybody a minute or so. Yeah, Joanne, just let us know when you've got the results.
I think we're probably have most of the answers. So
can you display those, or just you read them out to us? Or cool, great. Okay. All right. So we've got a nice mixed audience here. That's good.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So beginning with demand, right? So as we've moved into this digital society, criminals, activists, they've not only tagged along, but they've also found creative and sophisticated ways on how they can exploit the digital landscape, right? So many of today's cyber attacks are led by talented, well-funded, highly organized groups of individuals. And it seems that every week there's some major cybersecurity breach or attack that's in the news. So I've got a slide here that I'd like to pull up. Okay. So these are just some high-profile attacks I pulled off of a couple of websites that have occurred in September. And looking at this, there's some household names on here. These are pretty major attacks. A lot of them resulted in millions of dollars of ransom payments. So the moral of the story here is that cybercrime is prevalent. We all know about it. We hear about it. And regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of where you're located, and countries, as a matter of fact, aren't immune, as we know that there's been a lot of attacks on government agencies, as well as a lot of suppliers who provide vital services to those agencies. So kind of moving along, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to get some insight from our panelists and kick it off with a question around, what technology trends do you see that are driving the demand for cybersecurity professionals?
I can,
sure.
In general, just there's so many different trends. What we've been working on mostly lately is the AI, right? It's really cybersecurity around how internally we're all utilizing AI, how data is being stored, encrypted, utilized for what, training, etc. And I think the more and more we start embracing, and we do need to start embracing the new technology, right? It's not going to go away. Embracing the new technology, we really need to look at what cyber solutions we're putting in place and what training we're providing. And I think it's really about knowledge.
I think that's a good point. I mean, AI is definitely something that I think both sides are trying to take advantage of, right? I mean, we know that the hackers are looking at that,
Absolutely.
but also it's a tool that's being used to help to not only prevent attacks, but also to help folks who are in code development, for example, write code that's more secure.
And it's helping companies become more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And so we definitely can't fight against that. I think we need to figure out how to embrace that and work with that and be able to secure that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as far as, there are certainly non-technology drivers that are impacting the cybersecurity landscape. And a lot of that comes in with regulations that are pushed down from the state and local or state and federal levels. And so you're seeing a lot of industries that were no longer had to comply with regulations as it pertains to cybersecurity, now finding themselves behind the 8 ball and needing to put together appropriate cybersecurity controls, appropriate administrative controls in place to protect the data that they have.
Yeah, I would complement that certainly we do look at purchase decision-making drivers in cybersecurity. There are a number of areas that are consistently growing. The attack surface, obviously with generative AI, we already talked about it. There is potential for more types of attacks, specifically phishing and prompt injections and more on the social engineering side. We're just developing more code, and we talked about it, and that's because of the ability to, generate more software. So that presents an opportunity to develop more securely, but it also produces more code. So we need a lot more capabilities to review the code and make sure that we have secure development lifecycle practices, or what we call SDL. But certainly on the requirement side, and I think Julie touched on it, we are experiencing a revolution when it comes to security regulation. Just to give you some context, from 2020, where, we always had GDPR and we had privacy regulation with some reasonable security components and data breach implication, we are now at an era where we have cybersecurity laws. So we just had a federal law that passed on incident reporting and ransomware payment reporting. It's not even implemented, and you're already seeing, not fully implemented. There is still a rulemaking to be done, but you're already seeing the impact. We have the SEC cyber rulemaking that is already in effect. So specific requirements that is driving both reporting requirements, during the implications of having an incident are going up, but also just transparency. What are the best practices that you have in your organization? How is your enterprise, keeping up and making sure that they're, as Julie mentioned, their procedures are in line, right, with best practices. And then we have this federal procurement. So that's executive orders, software bill of materials, critical infrastructure, specific requirements. So overall, that's going to continue. And it's driving an opportunity, especially, and I want to connect it to our audience. As I shared, I came to cyber from a legal background. The beauty of cybersecurity, it's a discipline that you can really connect to from different disciplines. Some of the best hackers that I worked with came from the arts, came from creative industries. There is a lot of opportunities for people that are passionate about compliance, passionate about, intelligence to come in. So the nature of cyber is very process-driven. It requires creativity. People come into this industry from interdisciplinary backgrounds, and with attack surface and regulatory drivers, there is going to be a big demand. And, here I would say, certainly look at what the White House is doing with the partnership programs, companies like 5DX and others partnering with universities. There are a lot of opportunities for our audience to get scholarship to, learn the skill set and then get placed in the market. We have a very big gap of millions of positions that are open, and a lot of opportunities, especially for diverse backgrounds, when it comes to scholarships and efforts that are out there.
Yeah. Kind of keeping on the topic of demand. I mean, many of you work not only within your own organizations to acquire talent, but you also work with clients. What are some of your clients telling you about the challenges that they're having filling some of the cybersecurity positions that they have?
Typically, they can't. They can't afford the talent that they have. Entry-level folks, if they've not had any experience, there's a need for training, not only to understand the business itself, but then, the cybersecurity aspect as well. And so it's really difficult, very difficult, nearly impossible for small, medium businesses and nonprofits to really fill those skill gaps. Typically, your larger Fortune 500 type organizations are able to get the top talent, and a lot of those areas it still just remains open.
Okay. So
Yeah, Julie's 100% right. That's been like, so our clients, we service the small and medium business clients. That's all we do for that reason, Julie. It's they want the affordability, 2, the training, 3, I don't care how much money you put in training. There are new tools that come out on a daily, weekly, et cetera, basis, and there are new breaches that come out. And then there's the compliance and regulatory landscape that sits on top of everything else, right? So, really, what ends up happening is they can't fill the position, or they fill the position with somebody completely inexperienced, and then they lose more money because they haven't been guided, they don't have the right insurance, they don't have the right solution stack, they don't have the right monitoring, which ends up costing them more. And so you sort of go from, in this loop for small and medium businesses. And I think the larger businesses, like Julie said, they're doing okay and they'll spend the money, but the SMBs are having trouble understanding the ROI versus the cost. And they still, as far as we see it, when we're talking to prospects, many still see it as a luxury and not a necessity. And that's the mindset that we need to start changing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because that mindset's going to cost you a lot more.
Yep. So I guess, in general, a lot of demand, companies need these, folks to join their teams. They need people who've got the right, educational background, the right certifications and work experience. So there seems to be a lot of demand, and, based on everything that I've read recently, I mean, it doesn't seem that that's going to be changing anytime soon. So, demand is going to continue to increase. Okay. So, I mean, how many cybersecurity jobs are there really that are unfilled, right? I mean, that's a difficult number to kind of nail down. There's lots of sources that you can go to. There's one that I like, and I'd like to pull this up. Let me share my screen again here. This is a website that's called cyberseek.org. I'm not sure if our panelists are familiar with it, but it's a great place for people that are beginning their search or that are already in their search, and they want to learn more about what the opportunities are. This site's, it's interactive. This heat map is pretty cool because you can just mouse over a state and it'll give you a snapshot at how many positions are open. And as you scroll down on this screen, it gives you a total. And there's some other interesting information on here as well, around demand. And, one of the things that Joanne will do after this session is included in the email that she'll send out with the recording to the session. We'll also provide you with the resource sheet, and this will be one of the resources that are on there. But there are a lot of sources out there. There's a lot of demand out there. We don't see that stopping anytime soon. So what I'd like to talk now about is a little around the positions, because I've had conversations with a number of people who are interested in entering the field, and there seems to be a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstandings about what exists, what the positions are, the requirements that are required to work in those positions. So when we talk about positions, I think one of the important things, especially for folks that are at the beginning of their journey, is that there are a lot of different positions out there. Many companies call the same job function they'll have a different title or a different role for that. So when you look at pursuing a job in cybersecurity and you look at that role, I think it's really important to focus on what are the responsibilities, what are the skill sets, and not so much around what's the title of that position, because organizations may call the same position different things. So to help us understand where the audience is kind of in their career search, we've got another poll question that we'd like to put up. Okay. So, again, we've got some folks that are at the higher end, but a pretty nice mix. So, going back to the cyberseek.org website, let me share my screen again. There's another tool on there that I think will help folks that are. So, in addition to this heat map, there are other pages on this site that are very helpful. So one is this career pathways page. And these are some of the most common roles that you'll see. And what's nice about this site is as you mouse over it, it also kind of maps out what the career path is. So if you're starting out as a security specialist, kind of maps out what the path is, and then it also provides a lot of information around what those roles are. So if we click on security specialist, it'll provide some data around educational requirements, the certifications that are typically requested, 5-year projected growth, salary. So another good source to go to kind of do your research, try to figure out what's the best role if you're considering a transition into cyber. So with that said, I'd like to kind of go back to our panelists and talk a little bit about the roles in general, and what are some of the misconceptions, I guess, have you heard from people who are either transitioning or maybe not even in technology in general and just wanting to get involved in cyber? Where's some of the confusion, and where do you see people struggling?
Well, I'm happy to share from my perspective. I think, while I appreciate the resource and, the traditional path and, the ability to understand the trajectory, my experience has actually been that, you can get into the cyber profession from, as I shared, from many disciplines. Like my path will not even be captured by something like this because I do cyber policy, and there is so much impact to be driven in the space of cybersecurity standards and compliance and regulation that does not require even a technical degree, right? I was a principal engineer at Intel, even though I was a lawyer, right? So it's really important to emphasize to our audience that, we want to empower you, even though certainly, a lot of the market is looking for certifications, and a lot of the market is looking for traditional, sometimes degrees or certain experiences. Get yourself out there. I came to that industry from going to DEF CON and talking with hackers about like legal terms of use. So if you have a strong message and you are passionate about this industry, educate. There are trainings out there. As I shared, there are things like TribeDX. There are many opportunities out there. You can learn. You can go to conferences. You do need to network and put yourself out there. Those kind of engagements and your passion and your willingness to learn, and I think is going to be not less important than the actual credentials, because in the end, cyber is it's an industry of trust, and it is an industry of connections. So that is something that I've heard from many other people, and I recommend, especially for individuals that are interested in a non-traditional role within cyber, for example, policy or PR or communications, or, even on the more businessy side. And then you can start immersing yourself in that industry and find yourself contributing to it, even if you're not coming from a technical background. So that's something I would like to emphasize from my background.
That's well said. I mean, another question for our panelists. I mean, are there any specific roles that you would encourage? Let's say, for example, a person is coming from a technical background, but they have no cyber experience. What roles do you think they would be best suited for? Is there a specific role or a job title that you would kind of encourage them to begin to explore?
I would look at the defensive side of cybersecurity. We had interns in the summer, and when they came in this summer, they thought cybersecurity was solely limited to pen testing, and helping them understand the holistic aspect of it. And honestly, for us, for every single pen tester, I have 10 defensive cybersecurity experts that we use, because a pen tester can test multiple organizations over time, but you want somebody that really understands the defensive side of cybersecurity within an organization to really lock that place down. And then they will use a pen tester, a few times a year to test and make sure that they have everything appropriately secured. And so really understanding, Azure, understanding cloud, understanding, your local infrastructure, your printers, your firewalls, your switches, your everything internally, and understanding that. And then you've got the other aspect of understanding the administrative controls, the policies, the procedures, those kinds of things that have to be in place as well. So it's, if you've got a technical background already and you've been working in IT, defensive security is a great place to start because it's already taking advantage of the skills that you have already.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree with
yeah.
Julie 100%. Like, I think coming in and looking at, going into, if you already have the technical background, doing a little more work on the cloud, looking at networks, looking at switches, looking at understanding what we don't realize right now. And like I said, so TechWerxe it's a managed service provider. We're an MSP. We used to do IT work. We don't even say that anymore because everything involves cybersecurity now. Every solution, every client, I think, Julie, you said in the beginning, I don't think there are any clients out there that don't require cybersecurity. Before it was GDPR and a very specific, even the dry cleaners require some level of cyber solutions in place right now, right? So it's getting involved in a smaller company. And what I would say to people that are listening is get involved and understand that it's not such an easy jump. I know that I think some of us, Amit and I, and we all had non-traditional ways of getting in, and there was kind of like a jump into it. We're at a place right now where it requires you to have a lot more knowledge. So get in and you're going to, start at the ground and go into a company where you can put your hands in multiple pots and start learning. You can't just look at Azure or just look at AWS or just look at networks. You have to look across the board and learn little by little and then do, right? It's not about opening up a book. It's about actually doing the work and getting down and dirty. And then you'll be able to sort of learn from that.
Mm-hmm. So kind of a hands-on approach, but also trying to understand the bigger scope. And as Joanne had kind of touched on when we kicked this off, I mean, cybersecurity really cuts across many different roles, right? I mean, you can be a systems administrator, and a lot of what you do is cybersecurity related because you're controlling access, right?
Yeah, everything we do now is cyber related. We don't even, it's not even an IT company anymore. Mm-hmm. It's all just a cyber company for the most part.
Very interesting. I think we've got a couple of questions, Joanne, right, from the audience.
Yes. We have one question that came in from Angelina. What tips do you have for a student pursuing a cybersecurity degree to get their first internship? And are certifications important?
So as far as internships, I would work with your faculty. Use your career services within the university. Both of my sons graduated from college, and they both did internships starting after their freshman year. I would do as many as you can if you can do an internship every summer. And don't be afraid to reach out of your comfort zone. We had this summer, we had interns. One was doing a dual major between management information systems and theater. One was an electrical engineer, and one was traditional IT, and he had taken 2 cybersecurity classes. And so, these folks were a mix, kind of all over the board. So I would definitely don't limit yourself. Utilize career services network, like has been mentioned many times, and just get out there.
I mean, I would echo the same. I've realized I've had several interns work with us throughout the year, and I realized the best way for them to get involved, honestly, is sales, because they learn all the aspects of the products and how they work, and not from a technical aspect, but from how a business needs to learn it and understand it. And that's been really good. It also gives them the skill sets to start to network and learn how to go to these different groups and talk about what their company is about and what they want to do. And so I found sales is a great way to get in.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I teach in the Master in Cybersecurity program at Berkeley, and my sense is it really is that combination. Some employers really appreciate the multidisciplinary expertise, especially for more strategic roles. Again, as stressed out by my fellow practitioners here, I think getting the work done, like showing experiences. And for me, I think also immersing yourself with that community. I think that, conferences are great. You don't have to spend a lot of money to go to conferences. There are many scholarships, even Black Hat, the RSA, they have a scholars program. There are scholarships for students, get out there, have conversations, and you would find that people are willing to really support and help. And sometimes that might be the easiest path to get that entry level position, is just, immersing yourself and talking with people. So I think, I would emphasize these, both of this component. Obviously there's certifications like CSSP and other certifications that are very valuable, but I'm just saying there is, especially if you're coming from a non-technical position and you want to, get into cyber, sales, comms, marketing, collateral, compliance. There are many paths for positions, and you just learn the profession. That's what I did, and I do believe that it's actually striking how much cybersecurity is a process. A lot of the discipline is process driven. It's not really code. It's understanding logic, processes, risk management. So maybe as opposed to other disciplines that are very technical in computer science, here we have a big opportunity to drive impact at scale, even if you're coming from those different backgrounds. By the way, I know a lot of hackers that are not really coders,
Interesting.
Yeah, they're just like very, very good at thinking out of the box, and and today you can actually get the bounties for social engineering and phishing. So you don't
That's
have
true.
to actually be
Right.
a very great coder to be a great hacker. It depends on what you're trying to hack, but yes, there are some hackers that don't come with a very experienced code kind of career.
Well, you touched on that earlier, right? I mean, the tools are readily available, right? You can buy tools today, or you can hire somebody to launch a campaign, right? But it's having that creativity, it's having that passion to want to go after something, whether it's good or bad. I mean, that's really where the key is, because the technology can be bought. I think we've got one more question.
Actually, there's two, and one of them kind of ties into what you've kind of touched on a little bit, is what are some of the softer skills required to kind of get into the
good question,
cybersecurity space?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about what the technical skills are, but what are those soft skills?
Mm-hmm.
You have to
So I
understand-
actually have
ahead,
I have no technical background at all. At all. I couldn't code, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't fix the key if it popped off the keyboard. And I run a fairly successful company, and I think the soft skills are what Amit and Julie mentioned before. It's networking, it's logical thinking, being able to sort of evaluate, having the ability to understand how a business runs, understanding how processes work. And I think somewhere in here somebody said, are there jobs for students with a business degree? That's what I have. It's really cyber. There are technical aspects of the job, and you can get people that truly know that aspect to run that. But what I do is vendor negotiations. I look at the sales. I look at what businesses actually need. How do we affect the bottom line? What are the compliances? What are the solution sets that sit against the compliances? All of that stuff is soft skills. It's really knowing how to talk, to negotiate, to understand, to listen, and do that aspect of it. It really doesn't require a technical skill set.
Yeah, so a combination of both, right? I mean, technical skills and soft skills. Yep, I just want to make sure that we're good on time here. So we've got about 10 minutes. I want to move on to the last section, and we've got another poll question for you. This will be the last one, but we'd like to put this one up there and just kind of see where folks are in their actual career search. And we've got those results, Joanne, if we can just... Okay, so pretty much a mix of people that are, pretty much across the board. Okay. So I guess going back to preparing yourself for that search, I mean, I know that some of the challenges that I've heard, especially from women, is one, that they're very intimidated, especially if they don't have a technical background. I mean, another is, how do I get started? How do I know what's the best role for me? I'm a nurturer. I don't have a technical background. Where should I kind of begin my search? And I know that we've talked a lot about tools, and we've talked a lot about websites and being active in the community and having passion. But what advice could you give to specifically a woman who's thinking about a career in cyber and doesn't know where to begin? what would be the first step?
So I'll tell you, I had not looked for a job in a very long time. When I moved from consulting to working as the CISO for a bank, I walked right into that position because they were a client of mine. And so when I decided to move from the Midwest to the Atlantic Coast, I needed a new position. And it's tough out there. I submitted probably 250 to 300 different resumes out there before I finally got one. And when it got to the end, I had 3 companies at that point then that I was finalist for, and finally took the offer with Withum, and I'm very happy here. But it takes a long time. And one of the things that I did is I worked with a headhunter. I worked with a company that helped me with my resume to make sure that the right keywords were being emphasized in the right areas, because AI is going through my resume now. It's not, that first round of reviews of your resume is not a person. It's a program. And so just making sure that you've optimized everything you can with that. And network a lot. But it's hard. It's really hard. And don't let all of the no's get you down, because I went through it, 250 to 300 no's before I got a yes.
Persistence.
Yeah.
A question to the panel. As women, have you experienced any specific challenges that you think were related because of your gender? I mean, we know this is a male-dominated field, and we know that women, make up about 25%. Anything specific, any challenges that you've had to overcome?
Not really in cyber. In banking, it's difficult. It's still a very male-dominated field. But for me in cyber, it's been fantastic. I've not had, my department, there's 10% women and 90% men. And so you just have to, I have sons, so I've very male-dominated households in my house. So I'm used to that kind of interaction and communication style.
Yeah, I went through the banks, climbed that ladder, worked from home 2 days a week. I did not have issues at the banks nor here. And I think my only nugget to the audience is, don't look at issues because you're a woman. Look at issues based on skill set and what you're doing and your work ethic. Because if we go at everything saying, this isn't for me because I'm a woman, or I didn't get it because I'm a woman, it's not going to fly.
Good point. Yeah. Don't limit yourself, right? Yeah.
There's nothing to limit on. I don't think there are any issues that a woman faces that a man doesn't, and a man faces that a woman doesn't. I think most of what we're going to be looking at is skill set. And if we take that out of our heads and out of our vocabulary, it'd be a lot easier to sort of figure out, who actually deserves and belongs in that position.
And I would say, and I'm very fortunate to be I'm Israeli. Israel has probably one of the largest and most successful cyber workforce pipeline in the world. We are number 1 in startups and entrepreneurship. And a lot of the diversity is coming from our military, where at a very early on in your career path, you go to the military based on skills, and, age of 18, women are commanding large war rooms, basically commanding the room based on their technical skills. It's actually a very important equalizer in our ecosystem. But I would say is, unfortunately, even though it should be the case, that there shouldn't be any differences, we still see, even in Israel, based on, surveys, that women are asking for less salary. Women are not taking those opportunities, even they're more skilled. They're underestimating themselves, or they're feeling less confident. And we actually have to acknowledge that and continue to present more opportunities, continue to do networking, training, sponsorship, finding those allies, and empower. Because even though it might not be justified, the reality is we still have that gap. And a lot of it is because we have to constantly cultivate that sense of empowerment, and there's still work to be done. So I think, that I have personally experienced I wouldn't call it challenges, but there is a reason I put that doctor when I go to conferences, because I would go to Black Hat and literally people will think oh, I'm a beautiful lady for the booth, like to do this the sales, and like, no, I'm actually a keynote speaker here, so thank you. So I think unfortunately we constantly need to be empowering others and being very assertive and very confident of our skill set, and also demand the right compensation and the right platform for the amazing talent and diversity we bring to the table.
Well said. Well said. All right. Well, I've got one other slide here I'd like to share, and kind of just wraps everything up. So how to go ahead and build your plan. And I think we've touched on pretty much everything that's on this slide. But, don't be intimidated. Do your research. Have some focus. Understand what roles you want to pursue. Get the training that's necessary. Get the certifications. Network. Find a mentor. We've got a few folks on this call who I'm sure would be more than willing to spend some time helping to mentor someone. Show your passion, right? Create your plan. Go ahead and pick a position. Understand what's required. Get the training that's necessary. We didn't talk a lot about volunteering, but volunteer, join a community, get involved, and reach out to the right people. I think Julia touched on this, right? Make sure your resume is up to date. Make sure you're working with a staffing firm that's active in the field, and that's going to help you find a job. And I think with that, we're right on schedule, right, Joanne?
That you are.
Cool. I'd like to thank our panelists. This was a great conversation. As I mentioned earlier, Joanne will be sending out some supporting documentation. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you.